All right, next up on VOE, The Journey. Through a candid interview, we take a sneak peek into the ongoing journey of a successful speaker. Now, the goal is to reveal the intentional or reactive big shifts that are successfully building their business. And this month's big shifter is none other than Shep Hyken. Now, if you don't know Shep, then I don't know why, but you should know Shep because he is a Wall Street and New York Times best-selling author. He is basically in the world of customer service, and he's been doing this for about a quarter century. And if you're still successful after a quarter century, you've got some cred, and we want to know what's the deal. So, Shep, customer service world, could you have chosen a category that was more oversaturated?
You know what? I love it. It's just, I love competing against people all the time, having to deal with the pricing issues. It's like my favorite thing. Let the client beat me down. Perfect.
So you're kind of like a positioning masochist
No.
here.
So let's talk about it from the very, very beginning. And I actually started back in 1983. I started my business, and it wasn't until 1986 that I really focused on this one topic of customer service. And if you'll remember back in 86, there probably weren't as many people talking about customer service as there are today.
Yes.
Customer service is easy to get into because everybody understands it. And, of course, I understood it because growing up in my regular business or my regular jobs, I had summer jobs. And actually, I did have a business when I was 12 years old. But in all of these jobs, there was an element of customer service. Just didn't know it was called customer service.
Okay, now, I have to ask you, what was your job when you were 12?
Well, I was a magician. And I guess I still am.
A magician?
A magician. I started my birthday party business when I was 12 years old.
Well, that really beats mowing lawns.
And it was a thriving birthday party business.
A thriving birthday party business.
Yeah, to the point where, sometimes 6, 7, 8, 10 shows a week. My mom said, I can't drive you everywhere. We had to hire a driver. It was a high school kid. Paid him $5 for every show that I did. But it was quite a good business, And
so you were more successful at 12 than most speakers. So you had like 10 gigs a week and your own driver.
Right.
That you were paying under the table.
The amazing part was when I looked at how much money was being made, and I don't say this because it's kind of weird that I was making more than my teachers in school.
That's wrong, but yet so right at the same time.
It is. And what was also really cool is that my mom made me take a summer job, regardless of how successful I was. I worked in gas stations. I worked as a janitor and maintenance guy at a building. At age 16, I worked on a towboat one summer, which is the all-time worst job I ever had. But it balanced out with the all-time best job I ever had because at age 16, I was also doing comedy and magic at the Playboy clubs, that's an unbelievable job for a 16-year-old young man.
I don't even know what to say about that. All right, so you got some fascinating training for your future speaking career, which perhaps you didn't even know. So 83, are you kind of like the jack of all trades? Give me an audience and I'll speak.
Well,
what were you doing in 83?
Pretty much. 83, I'd been out of college less than a year, didn't have a job, looking around for something to do. I went and saw two speakers, Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins, on the same night. Unbelievable evening. It made me feel like I could do anything, and I thought about it, and I said I could probably even do that. I had the entertainment background, had a little business background, and having all these jobs, so I wrote a speech. It was a motivational, rah-rah, fire-em-up kind of speech, and I realized in a short period of time content was important to put into the speech. It was more of a motivational magic show. So I started to research, study, interview, whatever I could get my hands on, I read. And I read a book in 1986 or so called Moments of Truth, titled Moments of Truth by Jan Carlson. And that book, I said, that's what I love. That is it. That is everything I've ever believed, even as a teenager with these magic shows. And my parents taught me some great lessons, and great lessons that I still use today. I actually run my business on the principles of what my parents taught me when I was even younger than 12. As soon as I could learn how to write, my parents used to make me do something, which was when somebody did something nice, what do you do?
Send a thank you note.
Send a thank you note. And it was a lifelong principle of just do the right thing, show people you appreciate them. So at age 12, when I came home from my first birthday party, magic show, I'm sitting around the table, mom, dad, my brother, and my sister, and at the end of the evening, I'm telling them about the magic show, and my mom says, what are you going to do now? And I go, what do you mean, what am I going to do now? And she says, go write a thank you note. Oh, great idea. And then my dad gave me a few other tips, like you should call them a week before the show so they know you're going to come. I mean, we do speeches, right?
Sure.
We call them a week before so let them know that we're going to show up and we're going to be there. We're still alive. I show up early. I did the best job I could. I stayed a little late. And my dad gave me that idea: show up early, stay up late, extra value for the client or the customer or the mom and dad or the birthday party. But that's what we do today. I mean, it's a whole lot better than showing up late and make it up for it by leaving a little early, which I've seen people do.
So here's the question. Are your parents still with us?
My mom is.
Okay, so Mrs. Hyken, good job.
Thanks. The thank you note after the party, okay, and then the follow-up call, which my dad was in sales. He owned his own business, but he was a salesman. Really, at the end of the day, he could sell anything to anybody. And he said, follow up a week afterwards, thank them again, make sure you do a good job, and ask them if little Johnny has a brother or sister that also has a party.
Referrals after the business.
Exactly.
So, actually, we're going to stop this interview now. We're going to have your mom come on, and she's going to do the rest.
Okay.
Because I think this is applicable. All right, so you've got this fabulous foundation. You're basically a professional at 12. You have the world's greatest job for a teenager at 16. You're forced to do these other jobs, which expands your business knowledge and experience. You get incredible life business lessons from your parents. You go see Zig Ziglar and Tommy Hopkins. You get inspired. You read the world's best book on customer service. Then what happens?
Well, we ought to all go back to the very beginning when I saw Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar. Tom Hopkins wrote a book called How to Master the Art of Selling Anything, I believe is the title of the book. Still have it. And I read that book cover to cover over and over. I went to the newsstand. I bought every business magazine that was available that you could buy. I ripped out all the full-page ads, and I just started smiling and dialing. Age 23, year out of college. I had no real sales experience other than, true sales experience like this. I'm calling on corporate America and asking them, hi, who's the person who hires speakers? And I get that. I compiled a list, and then I just started drilling down that list.
So brute force cold calling.
And you know what the best part of it is? We still do that today. I don't even want to begin to do the math, but it's a number of years later. Now,
since the Reagan administration.
Right, exactly. Okay. So here we are, and today I'm still making calls, still following up with clients, because I believe no matter how big social media is, and we are a big player in that. That's a huge area. Website optimization, everything. There's no substitute for getting on the telephone and having communication.
So here is, you've got this business, you're using brute force cold calling, and you're getting gigs. How did you make the shift to differentiate yourself from the competitors? Because the longer, the first couple of years, though, you probably discovered, oh, guess what? I'm not the only one doing customer service training or speaking. How did you start differentiating yourself from all your competitors?
Well, actually, I think I was a little different, and I think I was early enough in the game that customer service hadn't quite caught on. So I had a head start. Early in the game, I wrote a book. I wish I would have written it earlier. And it was a book that was really based on my speech, which is a really cool thing that we all have a great opportunity to do, is take our speech, transcribe it. That's the nucleus or the outline of the book, and then just blow it out, make it better. That book, someone told me, Steve Miller, one of our fellow members, and I believe Needle Cobain told Steve Miller, that book will make you $1 million, but not because you sell $1 million worth of books. It's because the book will give you the credibility. The book will get you business. The book will be what you need to show that you have depth in your material. And he was more than right, knock on wood. So that was a really good, powerful piece, and I think that was a major a shift, because that's your word, shift.
Thank you for tying into the theme.
To the next level. There were a number of other things as well, but back in 1986, you asked me what differentiated me. I think I was very entertaining. I had the magic show background, so I had a very comfortable level of doing that. Customer service was just really becoming in vogue. I also focused at that time on internal customer service, which the book Moments of Truth talked about. And I said, hey, that's pretty cool. We start treating our employees like their customers. That's a great concept. So I may have been a front runner in that area as well. Today, I do have a lot of competition, and the way to distance yourself in competition is credibility. It's your materials. They need to reflect the level of your fee, what you do, the value claim that you can create for them. Recently, Rich Tiller, who's a Speakers Bureau, critiqued my website from the Speaker Bureau standpoint. And I do get good business from Speakers Bureau, but of course I'd love to have more. And he said,
in case any Speaker Bureaus are listening.
In case any Speakers Bureaus said, no, I'm not doing it as a plug, but let me tell you what he told me. And it was a fascinating revelation. Number one, he critiqued the website because bureaus are now comfortable sending clients to websites.
Yep.
They know, okay? And they said, great website, great access to your video, great quality in the video. And he gave me a very low score on differentiating myself from my competition. That is because customer service speakers are more or less a dime a dozen. And I thought to myself, well, how come that video is working for me so well? And the reason is by the time a client will call me if they've seen me, or if they've been searching on the net and they've seen the video, I'm not being lined up with 6 or 8 other speakers and just watching these videos at a mass, sit down, let's have a video and popcorn party. Okay, and I believe the video sells me well to the client, but when I'm up against 5 or 6 other speakers, it's not selling well. So I need to make some changes. But I believe what does distance me is years in the business, credibility, the amount of work I'm writing, not just in the form of books, but blogs, articles, the expertise. The book hitting the bestseller list, I think, is phenomenal. I don't know how many customer service books have been on the New York Times list, but I'm very proud of it. No, this the most recent one.
The most recent one,
right?
Yeah.
And the one before that was Wall Street Journal, USA Today. And the ones before that were more or less self-published or compilations with other speakers and authors. But at the end of the day, the volume of work that you can put out there is very important for credibility purposes. And today you can use video; you don't just have use the written word. But that's
so you crush them with credibility. Got it.
I try.
All right, so let's go back to the timeline here. So you start out. You're unique because you're on the front end of an increasing topic where there was a greater awareness here, and you can do magic. You've got personality, and right there that probably sets you apart from a whole bunch of
magic
folks.
helped.
Magic helps,
and also always was ahead of the curve on my marketing materials.
Okay.
Always, I don't know why. I recognized I have to have marketing materials that reflect higher value than what I require or what I'm asking for. My videos, and I remember I was early to the game to do a video. It was in the 80s, and videos cost $1,000 a minute to produce, not $500 for a 10-minute video. And now you can shoot it yourself and buy the software for $100 and do an amazing job editing. But I was always a little bit ahead of the curve on some of these marketing and sales, the promotional type items. And I still am. I try everything. That's the beautiful thing about coming to an NSA conference is I'm going to learn about a new technology, a new idea. Can't wait to go home and try it. And I do try it. And I believe trying it differentiates myself from my competitors. And they go, when did you start doing that? Well, dude, it was 3 years ago when they talked about it at the NSA meeting.
So you're an early adopter of marketing ideas.
Right.
All right, cool. What was the next thing that kind of took you to a different level?
Yeah, and as we talk about big shifts, again, not necessarily in order, because my mind is foggy from back in the 80s, okay? There was a lot of Eddie Van Halen and Journey going on.
We understand there.
Seriously.
Little Doobie Brothers without the brothers. We understand.
I don't know about that. Who's listening to this? Is Naomi Rhodey listening to this? Okay. Here's some of the big milestones, I believe, was recognizing that I was getting very busy, and then all of a sudden I would have these lulls of, where's the business? And I realized it's because I'm not in my office making the phone calls that I was making when I first started out on a consistent basis. And it was really difficult as I got onto the road to make these calls, these marketing calls. We didn't have cell phones per se back, or we probably did, but they were bolted to the floor of a car. So I remember myself being on a payphone in a hotel lobby using the long distance service to try and call clients. It wasn't really working. I hired my first part-time assistant, and all of a sudden she could follow up, she could make sure information went out as needed, and I could be on the road, and it was really, really cool and really easy. So there was a little bit of delegation of administrative responsibilities, but a big shift in that I was able to let somebody else handle, I would call it sales support. She didn't do sales. She just supported me in the effort and could keep it going. If a client called in, immediately information was sent out. Big shift there. As we got into the 90s, another major shift in the marketing was moving to a website. I have a website, and I know Hyken is not a popular name in the world. It's definitely less popular than Smith and Jones. But the fact that I was able to get my name, Hyken.com and ShepHyken.com, and basically any URL that I wanted at the time, I was able to create a good website. And again, that came from showing up at an NSA conference, and Ken Braley and his crew where there was some other
Talking
people.
about those domain names and things like that. You're like, what's that?
Yeah, I had no idea. And I remember the people that built the websites, boy, there was a lot of technology and a lot of information, so that was subbed out. Eventually, adding content to the website was great. You didn't just have a brochure; you had a depository for articles. And, or is it depository or repository?
I would think repository.
That's what it would be.
Depository
yes.
sounds like you have a medical condition called Hyken.
There you go. So that, but these little shifts are very important. And another shift, I believe, was certain clients that I had landed a big client and found out they would be multiple day clients. That was big. And I started looking for similar clients like them. Looking back, and I think this is so crucial, even today, after being in business, 28 years or so, I look back and I say, what were the successes that I had over the last 25 plus years that I could perhaps repeat because I'm not doing them anymore? And what happens? We stop doing things that make us successful because we think there's something new and bigger and better. And the reality is the basics are the basics. You can't get rid of them. You never go back to basics. You need to keep doing the basics and add to it everything else that you can. And some of these marketing and sales strategies will go in and out of vogue. I mean, who knows how long we're going to have Twitter? It's probably here to stay for a while, right?
Probably.
Okay. The audio cassettes were a great thing, but they went away and they were replaced by CDs. CDs are being replaced by downloaded MP3s, whatever, right? And so everything's going to shift and move on. So and maybe that's one of the reasons we get away from it. Okay? But at the end of the day, we have to go back and look at our successes and find out what did we do that was right, that's repeatable in the future, that we're no longer doing.
It would be an example of something that you kind of looked back and said, I somehow walked away from that. I need to re-embrace that.
Believe it or not, I look back at something that was probably one of the biggest shifts, and we already talked about it, and that was hiring that first person. And I said, what would happen if I hired another person? This wasn't that long ago, just a number of years ago. What would happen if I hired somebody? What could I delegate to that person that I don't delegate to my current support person that she doesn't do already? Or maybe we can take something away from her and free her up for doing so. And I did that. I hired another person, a part-timer, and I went, wow, this is really cool, because all of a sudden, more time. It's really cool what we've done. And again, that person comes and goes. They're not full-time. They're not vested in my company like my full-timers are. But that was a good shift. Once again, I talked about looking back and seeing, what past successes. Well, look at your clients. Who were your best clients, and why were they your best clients? What made, you can just say, let me look at my most successful clients from the standpoint of how many dates they booked me, how much money I was paid, how much product they bought. There's a multitude of ways to establish what a great client is depending on what you do. And say, okay, who are the other clients that are like that? But more importantly, who haven't I talked to that matches this profile? And start matching up future clients to the past clients that you've had. And it's amazing how when you start targeting not just an industry, but a specific type of client. And I'll share with you my big revelation was one of my clients, probably my most successful first two clients, used me for other people. They didn't hire me to work for their own company. They hired me and sent me to work for their customers' companies. They sponsored,
really?
Yeah. So they sponsored me. One of the clients was Anheuser-Busch, and they would send me to industry meetings on their behalf, sponsor me as a keynoter. I didn't show up in a meeting and say, oh, it just happens to be sponsored by Anheuser-Busch. No, they said, we want to give you the keynote speaker, and they sent me. They sent me to grocery store chains. They sent me to restaurant chains, anywhere that sold beer.
Which is pretty much everywhere.
Pretty much any, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, grocery stores, convenience stores, airplanes. Okay, believe it or not, there's industries, where they have these meetings where, hey, let's send Shep, the customer service guy, and he'll talk about customer service.
So Shep, sponsored by Anheuser-Busch.
Right. So I started looking around and saying, what other companies could sponsor me to their customers? And I started to target banks because I wanted to do client, appreciation events. And that wasn't quite the same as Anheuser-Busch, but I landed, as I started talking to banks, I landed on another type of client, a mutual fund client that said, you know what, we don't want you to work for us. We're going to send you to all these stock brokerage company meetings. So whether it be, Merrill Lynch, and all, now I'm going to their customers, and this is just like the Anheuser-Busch clients. You see the parallels?
Absolutely see the parallels.
Very important. So it's not just targeting an industry, it's targeting the reason that client is hiring you.
So now let's talk about more recent times here. It's like,
Okay.
what have been the shifts that you've made in the last couple of years, or the shifts that you're considering now in your business? What's the difference that's going to make the difference?
Saying, you know what, I'm going to take my speech and I'm going to write it as a training program, not as a keynote speech. And I hired a course designer, and that person wrote it for a specific speaker, or trainer, excuse me, a trainer that I had in mind. And I say, I admire this guy. He does a wonderful job training. He worked for this company. And I went to the course designer and I said, you know what, if I were going to hire a trainer, I want you to write the course as if you're writing it for that trainer. But make it so simplistic that he could just pick up my material, read through the manual, and be able to deliver the training. Well, we even made it more simplistic than that. I said, dumb it down even further so somebody that's never done training before might be able to pick this up, read it, and after a day go out and present this in a corporate setting. So we created a product that was really hire my trainer, and he'll go and present this training program, which is a blowout of my regular 1 hour speech. We turn it into, it could be done as an 8 hour program. It could be done as 4 2 or 3 hour programs over the next 4 to 6 months. There were different ways to chop it up and use the same material. In addition to that, we had what we called the customer focus in a box. And that was just the set of manuals.
Huge binder.
A huge binder, and the training materials and participant kits for up to 10 people. And then we charged additional for more participant kits. And that worked pretty well. And as it continued to go on, and what would happen is I was using Google pay-per-click advertising to get the business. I really didn't go on an aggressive outbound marketing campaign. I talked to existing clients about it. And it just kind of started to grow. And some years have been better than others, but I realized this is cool. My goal is to grow this part of the business bigger than my speaking business. Love it for a couple of reasons. One, I can stay home and somebody is working out there doing the material, and we're pushing this message and this content out to people, and I'm able to do other things. And that could be speaking engagements, or as I mentioned, staying at home, or working on the next book, or whatever. The second part about it is I recognize that this is not a speaking business in the sense of a practice of which most of us are in. Again, we're not speaking, we're producers. We're not speaking and making money that day. We're not making money. And how do you sell this when you want to retire? A number of years ago, a friend of mine who has a wonderful company, manufacturer, said to me, boy, you sure make a lot of money. I said, well, yeah, but you've got a business. He goes, yeah, but I look at what you're making. I go, well, one day, I don't know how many years from now, you're going to, in one day, sign your name on the bottom of a contract that said sold. And you're going to make a whole lot more than I am over the last 30 years. And he goes, oh, good point. I want to eventually sell this one day. Not in the near future, but maybe in 10 years. I realize sales have to be much bigger than they currently are. But we're growing it. And it has to take me out of the mix, but the content is there, which is me. It just doesn't have my name on it.
Well, but that's a key difference, because I see that as a big shift where you said it's now going to be about the content and not about me delivering the content. And if for someone who is traditionally defined themselves as a speaker, or someone gets on stage, that's a pretty big mental shift.
I'm going to tell you when the shift really hits you. When you go and you watch the trainer do your material and you cringe because he or she it says something that was totally the opposite of what you meant it to be. But then you look at the ratings at the end of the day, and that person was stellar. They did a great job. The client loved the program. And you just have to say, you know what? It works.
And you got to not say anything.
And not say anything, Yeah. So I'll never forget, there's one concept that I have that many times is misunderstood, not just by, the trainer, but even by the clients when I try to communicate. It's not a complicated concept, but it's wrong quite a bit. And I heard that, and it was the exact opposite of what I would have said. And I just said, you know what? It's working. Just sit down and shut up.
In some ways, it was such a good concept. It works even when it's not true.
Exactly.
All right, so now here we are today. You've continued this journey process. You've brought on more people. You've got other trainers, seasoned trainers that you've brought in to replicate yourself here. What's next? What's the next shift for the Shep Hyken empire?
Well, I see lots of writing. I recognize the success of the books is one thing, but we have to get that content out. And the way to do that is to continuously write. So once a week, and this isn't anything special or it's not rocket science, it's once a week I write a short article, call it a blog post. Once a month, that blog post is a little bit bigger, it's an article. We are putting that everywhere and anywhere we can. The goal is to be recognized as a content expert in an area, by the way, that has a lot of people who claim to be experts. So I just push it out there a little bit further. The training side of what we do is pretty big. Again, I want to grow that. I think that's crucial. I'm looking for ways, and there's so many different directions to take it, but ways to say, Shep gets hired, he does his presentation, what's the next step? The next step doesn't need to involve me. It should involve my content, it should involve getting it out there, and I'm passionate about two things. I'm passionate about my business, and I'm passionate about my client's business. And I think they work very well together, those two passions.
So the next big thing is less of you.
The next big thing is less of me, yeah. I don't want to make myself extinct, though.
Probably a good idea.